We're live from New Delhi. You're watching Detention News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. Ukraine President Zelensky violates the term of the ceasefire. Israel extends ground operations in Gaza after deadly airstrikes. USA's bridge proposal on the table to extend the ceasefire and release of hostages. A legal standoff continues in U.S. as White House vows to continue its mass deportation of undocumented migrants, while judge warns of 5 prisoners of war each. Russia handed over an additional 22 seriously wounded Ukrainian prisoners, both sides confirmed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in a statement on X, described the exchange as one of the largest of its kind. Well, in the first conversation since an Oval Office shouting match on February 28, Zelensky thanked Trump for U.S. support, and the two leaders agreed that technical teams would meet in Saudi Arabia in the coming days. The White House announced that it has moved beyond the previously negotiated U.S.-Ukraine minerals and natural resources deal, shifting its focus to securing peace between Ukraine and Russia. Well, Trump briefed Zelensky on his phone call on Tuesday with Vladimir Putin, in which the Russian president rejected a proposed full 30-day ceasefire sought by Trump. He described his conversation with Trump as positive, very substantive and frank. White House says the talks have moved beyond U.S.-Ukraine minerals deal. And for more, we have DD India's Akshay Dongre joining us. Well, Akshay, after a positive phone call between Trump and Zelensky and the prisoner swap facilitated, which went ahead, what can be anticipated as the talks move forward?
Well, Lipakshi, now we are in fact entering into an era where actually negotiations and discussions are happening. That has been the call of several of the senior leaders, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has always reiterated that the solution to war can only be found on discussion table and not on the war front. And that exactly is what Donald Trump is doing as well at this moment. He has asked both the leaders, in fact, President Putin and President Zelensky, to come to negotiating table to have a discussion and to end the war through dialogue and discussion and not through arms, which is only going to lead to further catastrophe, not only in Europe but in Russia as well. So that seems to be exactly the thing that's happening now. It had been anticipated by Donald Trump that he will ask both the leaders to come on the negotiating table, and that is what is happening, because earlier it was President Putin who, after about a 2-hour discussion, telephonic discussion with President Trump, has agreed for a lot of demands that the US has been raising as far as halting this war is concerned. And now the other side of war, that is the Ukrainian president, he has had a discussion with President Trump, and it seems that after the incident that happened two weeks back in the Oval Office, there is finally some sense as far as the Ukrainian leadership is concerned that if you want to halt the war, you cannot go through it by getting more arms or getting more money, because you're fighting an adversary like Russia that has the largest stockpiles of nuclear weapons in the world. So you cannot defeat Russia through arms or on battlefield. You have to come on the negotiating table. You have to come and discuss terms of ceasefire with them, and that seems to be happening, because though there are still a lot of points that still remains as far as friction is concerned, but it seems that the negotiations are going the way of a ceasefire that can not only be temporary, like it has happened, that both the sides have agreed to not attack each other's power plants or power supplies, but now we are looking at a possibility of a more permanent ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. However, the kind of terms and negotiations that are going to take place are going to be quite complex, because both the sides, both Russia and Ukraine, are sticking to their points. Where Russia has asked for Donetsk and Donbas region, where more Russian speakers live. Ukraine has said that they will not be conceding any sort of territories to the Russian Federation. So
Right.
there are some sticking points, but it seems that peace can be possible now as far as the Eastern Europe is concerned.
All right, the sticking points, of course, remain. But Akshay, tell me, how do you think the shift in U.S. priorities from the minerals deal to peace negotiations could affect the dynamics of the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, we have seen, Lipakshi, that when Donald Trump had spoken about the minerals that could be given to the U.S. in exchange of the kind of funding that the country has provided. Even Russia had offered that they also have similar minerals, and in fact in much larger quantity. Perhaps we are looking at a possibility under Donald Trump that both Russia and US on certain aspects at least can come into perhaps trade, can come into perhaps deals that has not been seen ever before. And that is being done by Donald Trump in a negotiating manner that he has been doing all his life. He's a very popular businessman as well in the United States. So the kind of business tactics that are being used as far as President Trump is concerned is quite unprecedented. And in fact, the deal that you're talking about, a priority for Donald Trump is to stop the war, because unless the war has been stopped, there cannot be any deal in that region. And if the war escalates, then it can mean total devastation of Ukraine or of the region, which also has minerals. So that would mean, in fact, the destruction of these core areas as well, and it would not be inhabitable or it would not be feasible rather to extract these minerals. So that's what it seems to be happening. That Donald Trump has prioritized peace right now, so that business deals can be followed up later.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Akshay, for all those insights. Well, Trump has long promised to end Europe's deadliest conflict since World War II, but his outreach to Putin has unnerved European allies. Some European leaders said Putin's rejection of Trump's proposed full truce was proof Moscow was not seeking peace. The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, said she would present a proposal to European leaders in Brussels on Thursday to provide Ukraine with 2 million rounds of large caliber artillery ammunition. Meanwhile, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has said that the European Union had to back efforts by US President Donald Trump to get a peace deal in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, we don't support it because in our understanding there is one simple mission to be done by the European Union to support President Donald Trump efforts to make peace. That's what we should do, nothing more. But I have to represent the opinion of my own nation, and the Hungarians are still very strongly believe that we have to target all our efforts and capacity to make peace as soon as we can.
Well, the European Council summit will convene on Thursday in Brussels. Head of state and government of the 27 member states, as well as EU Council President Antonio Costa, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and the bloc's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas will participate in the summit. Several critical topics reflecting current geopolitical and economic priorities are expected to be discussed during the two-day summit. The agenda includes discussions on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, with a particular focus on the bloc's continued support for Ukraine, especially amid heightened tensions and the need for security guarantees. The summit comes after a busy period of diplomacy, with the EU leaders aiming to respond to shifting transatlantic dynamics and regional challenges. European defense will also be a key point, with leaders likely to explore ways to boost capabilities and address funding, possibly in light of a forthcoming EU white paper on defense. And the Israeli military has resumed ground operations in the central and southern Gaza Strip, and its operations extended Israel's control over the Natazarim corridor, which bisects Gaza. The Israeli military operations were a focused maneuver aimed at creating a partial buffer zone between the north and the south of the enclave. The renewed ground operations came a day after more than 400 Palestinians were killed in airstrikes in one of the deadliest episodes since the beginning of the conflict in October 2023. shattering a ceasefire that has largely held since January. Well, the U.S. State Department blamed Hamas for the resumption of hostilities and said there was still a U.S.-crafted bridge proposal on the table to extend the ceasefire and bring about the release of the hostages held by the group in Gaza. The renewed violence was condemned by some Western nations, including France and Germany, as well as Qatar and Egypt, which had been acting as mediators in the ceasefire negotiations. Well, French President Emmanuel Macron spoke with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and both leaders condemned the resumption of Israeli strikes on Gaza. Macron said they will co-chair a conference on a two-state solution aimed at helping revive a political perspective for both Israelis and Palestinians. Macron also said he welcomed the Crown Prince Jeddah initiative, which enabled the start of peace negotiations in Ukraine. The White House said on Wednesday that it expects to continue its mass deportation of undocumented migrants and fight unfavorable court rulings, but will comply with judicial orders. The White House accused judges of usurping executive power in its latest broadside against federal courts whose rulings have gone against President Donald Trump's administration. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had alleged that had been a concerted effort by the far left to pick judges who were clearly acting as partisan activists to deal with cases involving the Republicans' actions.
Zelensky asked for additional air defense systems to protect his civilians, particularly Patriot missile systems, and President Trump agreed to work with him to find what was available, particularly in Europe. The two leaders also agreed on a partial ceasefire against energy. Technical teams will meet in Saudi Arabia in the coming days to discuss broadening the ceasefire to the Black Sea on the way to a full ceasefire.
Well, the U.S. judge warns that the Trump administration could face consequences if it violated a judge's order temporarily blocking the deportation of hundreds of Venezuelan migrants. Even the judge gave the government more time to elaborate on the expulsions. Washington-based U.S. District Judge James Boasberg said the administration could choose to invoke the state secrets doctrine, which protects sensitive national security information from being disclosed in civil litigation, and explained why it was doing so rather than provide details on deportation flights. Ankara's residents signed a petition launched by the Venezuelan government calling for the release of 238 compatriots the United States sent to a notoriously harsh prison in El Salvador, accused of being gang members. In a proclamation published on March 15th, U.S. President Donald Trump invoked the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to swiftly deport what the White House said were members of the Venezuelan gang Tren Aragua. The Trump administration used the authority to deport 137 Venezuelans to El Salvador on Saturday, even as a judge ordered the removals halted, sparking a legal standoff. And still to come in DD India News Hour. U.S. continues its strikes on Houthi strongholds in Yemen. Trump vows to annihilate Houthis completely. Dark energy, the mysterious cosmic force appears to be weakening. And Pope Francis' condition improves, no longer needs ventilation.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked, we just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching TTN News. I'm Lepak Shikurana. Moving on, thousands of protesters took to the streets of Istanbul on Thursday following the arrest of the city's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu. The opposition figure is seen as a key rival to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. 100 chanted anti-government slogans, with police using pepper spray to disperse protesters when they tried to push their way through a police formation. Several roads had been closed, some social media platforms were restricted, and a 4-day demonstration ban was put into place in an attempt to thwart protest. However, despite the ban, many gathered outside the Istanbul's police headquarters, the city hall, and outside the headquarters of İmamoğlu's Republican People's Party. Meanwhile, EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen said Wednesday the detention of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu was deeply concerning.
The arrest of the mayor is deeply concerning. As a Council of Europe member that Turkey is and an EU candidate country, Turkey must uphold the democratic values.
Well, the leader of Romania's second-largest party, George Simeon, became the hard right's candidate in a May presidential election rerun after an ally withdrew from the race on Wednesday. Simeon, leader of the hard right Alliance for Uniting Romanians, and Ana Maria Gavrila, leader of the Young People's Party, joined the race with the agreement that one would stand down if election authorities approved both of their candidacies. Gavrila withdrew on Wednesday. The European Union and NATO member will repeat its 2-round presidential election on May 4th and 18th after the Constitutional Court voided the initial ballot in December following accusations of Russian meddling in favor of far-right, pro-Russian frontrunner Kalin Georgescu. In fact, Georgescu, who denied accusations of Russian meddling, was barred from running again earlier this month. He stopped short of endorsing a single candidate after his bid was rejected. And people in North Macedonia's Kokani attended a vigil at a local church on Wednesday to remember the many victims of a fire in a nightclub at the weekend and pray for the health and survivors and relatives. Trees and other surfaces near the church were covered in death notices for the victims on Wednesday, attracting attention from passers-by in the small town of around 25,000 residents. The 59 people killed had been attending a hip-hop concert when the fire broke out in the early hours on Sunday at a nightclub. Officials said the nightclub's license was legally obtained and that the venue lacked fire extinguishers and emergency exits. More than 150 people were injured. Well, a jury in North Dakota has found Greenpeace liable for hundreds of millions of dollars in damages in a case brought by a U.S. pipeline operator that accused the group of orchestrating a campaign of violence and defamation. Well, the Greenpeace must pay a Texas-based pipeline company nearly $667 million in damages for the environmental advocacy group's role in 2016-2017 protest against the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota. The verdict included damages for defamation, trespassing, and conspiracy. The jury awarded more than $400 million in punitive damages, which are intended to punish defendants for their conduct. Greenpeace denied wrongdoing and called the case an attack on free speech rights. The group's lawyers said they would appeal the verdict. Construction of the pipeline was met with fierce protest by environmental and tribal advocacy groups who said the project would poison local water supply and exacerbate climate change. The project began in 2016 and was completed the following year. The pipeline transports roughly 40% of the oil produced in North Dakota's Bacon region. And moving on, Pope Francis has suspended the use of an oxygen mask as the clinical condition of the pontiff was improving after more than 1 month in the hospital. The Vatican said on Wednesday that the Pope is no longer using mechanical ventilation for help breathing at night, and his doctors believe he will continue to improve. The Vatican press office said that Pope Francis's pneumonia has not been eliminated but was under control. Pope Francis has been in Rome's Gemelli Hospital since February 14, suffering from pneumonia in both lungs, but the Vatican has reported recent progress after earlier worries that his life could be at risk. Well, the Vatican also released the first image of the Franciscan hospital on Sunday, showing him praying in a chapel. And the first commercial charter flight has taken off from Pokhara International Airport in Nepal to Chengdu in China's Sichuan province. This inaugural flight marks a significant achievement, coming 2 years after the airport's inauguration in 2023. The flight is part of the Pokhara Visit Year 2025 celebrations and commemorates 70 years of Nepal-China diplomatic relations. A delegation of 126 tourism entrepreneurs, media personnel and officials from Pokhara Metropolitan City and the Pokhara Visit Year 2025 Performance Committee were on board, aiming to promote tourism between the two nations. And the Canadian Pacific, a 1940s steam train that took soldiers and supplies to England's south coast during World War II, returned to service on Wednesday, taking on board volunteers who spent 14 years reconditioning it and relatives of those who built it. The Canadian Pacific set off from the market town of Alresford in southeast England for an inaugural journey to nearby Alton, marking the completion of a restoration project that began in 2011. The train was named after the Canadian Pacific shipping lines that crossed the Atlantic during the war to deliver military and civilian supplies to Britain. Many such vessels were destroyed or damaged by the Nazis. After World War II, the train was used for regular passenger services to and from the coast, often for holidaymakers. It was last taken out of service in 2008 and is now due to be revived for tourist trips on the Heritage Watercress line. And US President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that Iran must immediately stop sending military supplies to the Houthis and let the Yemeni group fight it out themselves. In a post on Truth Social, Trump added that US strikes on the Houthis will get progressively worse and that they will be completely annihilated. Also, the United States struck targets in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a on Wednesday, the latest in a wave of strikes carried out in retaliation for attacks by the Houthis on the shipping in the Red Sea. And Finland once again tops the World Happiness Report, which was released on Thursday. People in 143 countries and territories are asked to evaluate their life on a scale from 0 to 10, with 10 representing the best possible life. Results from the past 3 years are averaged to create a ranking. Finland remained in the top spot for an 8th year with an average score of 7.75, followed by Denmark, Iceland and Sweden. The US fell to 24th place, its lowest ever level in the global ranking, while Afghanistan held the bottom spot with scores of 1.36.
Well, in this year's World Happiness Report, we have Finland again at the very top, and the average life satisfaction in Finland is around 7.75. As people self-report the way their lives are going, that's the very top. So the other Nordic countries follow closely behind Finland, with Denmark and Sweden and Iceland. At the very bottom of the World Happiness Report, we have Afghanistan falling even lower, with an average life satisfaction in the country with now 1.3 out of 10 in the way that people self-rate the way their lives are going.
And the London Original Print Fair, the British capital's longest-running art fair, celebrates its 40th anniversary this week with an array of works spanning from old masters to contemporary creations. Running March 20th to 23rd, this year's edition features more than 40 studios, dealers and publishers with displayed works. The fair, which launched in June 1985 with 16 exhibitors, has long offered fans the chance to view and buy prints considered more affordable than paintings and sculptures. Works from around the world are featured, including those showcasing as part of India Printmaker House, a platform artist Shivani Ladha founded for young printmakers. And Vietnam's airports, seaports and border gates will implement biometric technology and VNeID by year-end, following a directive from the Prime Minister. This initiative aims to streamline administrative procedures and transform government services from a request-based to a service-providing approach. The government plans to simplify more than 320 administrative procedures through the digitization of personal data on electronic ID accounts, with completion expected in the second quarter of 2025. Local authorities are also expected to digitize household registration data and explore ways to reuse this data to simplify procedures further. And the mysterious and invisible cosmic force known as dark energy has deteriorated over time rather than remained constant. According to the new data, if dark energy is in fact weakening, it would likely mean that science's understanding of how the universe works will need to be rewritten. The new findings come from the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument, which sits on the telescope at the Kitt Peak National Observatory in the U.S. state of Arizona. The findings, announced on Wednesday, are part of a years-long study of the history of the cosmos, focusing upon dark energy. This analysis, combined with other astrophysical data, offers mounting evidence that the impact of dark energy may be weakening over time and that the standard model of how the universe works may need to be revised, the researchers said. Well, to tell you, dark energy makes up roughly 70% of the universe, yet we know nothing about it. Around 25% of the universe is the equally mysterious dark matter, leaving just 5% of everything that we can see and touch, matter made up of atoms. Now let us know, what is dark energy? Dark energy is invisible and it does not interact with matter or light, and it may not even exist. Dark matter is thought to pull galaxies together while dark energy pushes them apart. During first 9 billion years of universe, dark matter was winning, forming galaxies and everything else. Then dark energy gained the upper hand, starting to speed up the expansion of the universe. However, for most of the history, scientists had little idea this almighty tussle was going on. They thought that the expansion of the universe would simply start to slow down because of gravity. Everything changed in 1998 when two separate groups of astronomers noticed that distant exploding stars, including supernovae, were farther away than they ought to be. This led to the discovery that the universe is not just expanding, it is doing faster and faster. And moving on, the U.S. government-funded Radio Free Asia told hundreds of staff that they will be put on unpaid leave from the end of this week after President Donald Trump's administration said it was terminating the outlet's funding. The Trump administration announced on Saturday it was terminating the federal grants that sustain the operations of RFA and Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and that more than 1,300 Voice of America employees were placed on leave in a likely fatal blow to the government-funded outlets. RFA has broadcast across Asia since 1996. Rights activists say its multilingual reporters serve as a rare source of reliable news in authoritarian countries, raising awareness about the plight of oppressed minorities. The cuts are part of the unprecedented push by Trump and billionaire Elon Musk to shrink the federal government, which they say wastes U.S. taxpayers' money on causes that do not line up with U.S. interest. And still to come on DD India News Hour. 10th Indian, Latin American and Caribbean Conclave in New Delhi today with the EM Dr. S. Jaishankar leading key discussion. Slovakia Foreign Minister spoke exclusively to DD India, highlights President Murmu's key visit to strengthening India-Slovakia relations. Rashtrapati Bhavan to host 10-day Udyam Utsav, India's President Murmu to inaugurate it.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. Ukraine President Zelensky agrees to implement a halt on energy infrastructure attacks but vows to attack if Moscow violates the term of the ceasefire. Israel extends ground operations in Gaza after deadly airstrikes. US says bridge proposal on the table to extend the ceasefire and release of hostages. A legal standoff continues in the US as White House vows to continue its mass deportation of undocumented migrants while judge warns of consequences. Turkey detains mayor and President Erdogan's main election rival over graft and terrorism allegations, sparking protest. Fed holds interest rates steady as it waits for Trump economic policy to take hold, sees a slower growth, expect 2 cuts coming this year. And moving on, over the past 3 days, New Delhi has been the epicenter of global discourse at the 10th Raisina Dialogue. With over 125 countries represented, this flagship event on geopolitics and geoeconomics wrapped up on Wednesday, tackling pressing issues from peace to the planet. Here's a look at the highlights.
The Raisina Dialogue 2025, which was inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, was a powerhouse of ideas drawing heads of state, ministers and thought leaders to India's capital. Hosted by Observer Research Foundation and Ministry of External Affairs, this year's theme, Kal Chakra, People, Peace, Planet, set the stage for bold conversations on a world in flux.
Let us focus instead on a more practical and attainable peace, based on a series of concrete actions and effective agreements which are in the interest of all concerned. There is no single simple key to this peace, no grand or magic formula to be adopted by one or two powers. Genuine peace must be the product of many nations, the sum of many acts. It must be dynamic, not static, changing to meet the challenge of each new generation.
US Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard underscored peace as a unifying force, spotlighting the strong India-US partnership. Meanwhile, New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, the chief guest, hailed India's role in the Indo-Pacific, pushing for deeper economic ties amid a tech-driven future.
India that have a significant role to play in the Indo-Pacific region. In an increasingly multipolar world, India's size and geostrategic heft gives you autonomy. For at a time when democracy is in decline with less than half the world's adults electing their leaders, it truly is an inspiration that 650 million Indians turned out to vote last year in the largest election in history. Your national election is a triumph of logistics, but it's also a triumph of legitimacy. We want to live in an Indo-Pacific where countries are free to choose their own path, free from interference. A region where no one country comes to dominate. And it is a sign of the times that I have to stand here defending respect for sovereignty, yet New Zealand's approach is increasingly shaped around that objective.
From trade tensions to climate challenges, the dialogue bridged divides. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar wrapped it up with a call for collaboration, emphasizing India's growing global voice as a connector of nations and ideas. Dr. Jaishankar also called out the threats to global trade due to rising isolationist policies.
There are different ways of dealing with weaponization. One is to stay on the right side of the weapon. So, you don't get hit. The world today makes business decisions, factoring in national security. In the digital era, I think it's not just about cost. It is about comfort. It is about trust. We are involved right now in 3 big trade negotiations with the EU, with the UK, and now with the United States. These are our growth markets. These are our technology partners. I think there are non-economic factors which I think increasingly influence business decisions.
As the curtains close on Raisina 2025, the message is clear. Unity and innovation are key to navigating an uncertain world. From New Delhi, this dialogue leaves a blueprint for progress, rooted in people, peace and planet. From New Delhi, Akshay Dongre, DD India.
And the ongoing 10th edition of Indian, Latin America and Caribbean Conclave in New Delhi, focusing on enhancing India's trade relations with the Latin American and Caribbean region, will witness the presence of India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. The minister will attend the special plenary session discussing the topic advancing economic alliances for collaborative growth. The conclave features 15 overseas ministers and around 300 international business delegates from the LAC region. And Slovakia looks forward to hosting India's President Draupadi Murmu soon. Visiting Slovakian Foreign Minister Juraj Blanar says President Murmu's visit can be expected to further boost the bilateral ties. The minister spoke exclusively to DD India's Ramesh Ramachandran in New Delhi.
The last visit we have on a high level, it was a visit of my counterpart, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jaishankar. It was in 2022. So we are really looking forward to visit of Her Excellency President of India at the beginning of April, so with the business delegation as well. So this will be the very important part of our strengthening tie between our countries.
Well, Slovakia says that India, as the voice of the global south, is an important stakeholder in Ukraine peace.
Everyone understands that this peace should be guaranteed from the superpowers and also from the European Union and also some countries like Global South. This will be contributing to be achieved long-lasting peace for a future.
Talking about the Global South, Mr. Minister, do you see a scope for India, for instance, to actually play a role in resolving this conflict?
Yeah, sure. India is also a very important stakeholder. We can guarantee some security.
And you can watch the full interview at 8:30 p.m. or 1500 GMT on Thursday. And moving on, India has dispatched machinery worth $1 million to Suriname as part of its development partnership to support the growth of the country's passion fruit industry and strengthen bilateral economic cooperation. India's External Affairs Ministry embassy in a social media post highlighted that the grant would contribute to the development of the country's marcoesa, or the passion fruit industry. Prior to that, India in November 2024 sent the first consignment of about 425 MT of food grains and other edible items to Suriname for its social welfare program. And India's Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, on Wednesday approved incentive scheme for promotion of low-value BHIM UPI person-to-merchant transactions. Addressing the media, Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw said that the scheme will be implemented at an estimated outlay of 1,500 crore from April 2024 to March 2025. Incentive at the rate of 0.15% per transaction value will be provided for transactions up to 2,000 for small merchants.
श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने 2020-21 से एक स्पेशल स्कीम चलाकर एमडीआर की कॉस्ट न पड़े कस्टमर्स पे वो एक सिस्टम बनाया है. 1,500 करोड़ रुपीस की ये स्कीम है एंड एज पर दिस स्कीम फॉर ऑल ट्रांजैक्शंस विच आर पर्सन टू मर्चेंट, जो स्मॉल मर्चेंट्स के पेमेंट्स होंगे अप टू 2,000 रुपीज, उसमें कोई ट्रांजैक्शन की कॉस्ट नहीं लगेगी और उनको इंसेंटिव दिया जाएगा.
Well, the minister also announced that the cabinet has approved setting up of a urea production complex in Assam's Namrup. The project, worth over 10,600 crore rupees, will significantly change the availability of urea in the northeast region.
नामरूप में ब्रह्मपुत्र वैली फर्टिलाइजर कॉर्पोरेशन लिमिटेड की एक प्लांट है. उसकी प्रीमाइसेस के अंदर अमोनिया यूरिया कॉम्प्लेक्स नामरूप 4 फर्टिलाइजर प्लांट के नाम से ये नया प्रोजेक्ट है और इस प्रोजेक्ट में एक जॉइंट वेंचर बनेगा 10,600 करोड़ रुपीस के टोटल इन्वेस्टमेंट से इस प्रोजेक्ट में यूरिया की मैन्युफैक्चरिंग होगी।
Well, the Punjab police on Wednesday began evicting protesting farmers from the Shambhu and Kanori border points, which have been closed for more than a year, and raising tents set up there. A group of farmer leaders were also detained by the police when they were on their way to join the ongoing farmers' protest. Wednesday's meeting was the 7th round of talks between the farmers and the government since February 2024, and discussions centered on the main demand for a law guaranteeing MSP for crops. After Wednesday's talks, central ministers have decided to appoint a joint secretary to engage with various stakeholders to delve deeper into the contentious issue of MSP. The next round of meetings is scheduled for May 4th. And India's President Draupadi Murmu will inaugurate Udyam Utsav at Rashtrapati Bhavan on Thursday, marking a significant initiative to celebrate and empower India's micro, small and medium enterprises. Organized by the Ministry of MSME, the 10-day event will highlight the contributions of small businesses, artisans and entrepreneurs across the country. The event will reinforce the government's commitment to foster grassroots economic growth. The event will feature 7 thematic pavilions, each highlighting a different segment of MSMEs, including heritage and handicrafts, organic and agro-based products, green technologies, women entrepreneurs, tribal enterprises, and khadi and village industries. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Stocks rise as Federal Reserve keeps interest rates unchanged. Gold hits record high and Nasdaq leads with 1.4% gain. The second edition of the Khelo India Para Games kick off in the national capital on Thursday. And the World Sparrow Day is being celebrated globally with the theme A Tribute to Nature's Tiny Messengers.
Always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and on to some business news now. The Federal Reserve kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged on Wednesday and signaled that it still expects to cut rates twice this year. The U.S. Federal Reserve maintained its policy rate between 4.25% and 4.50%. Federal Reserve officials maintained their projection of 2 interest rate reductions in 2025, whilst revising their growth estimates downwards for 2025 and increasing their inflation predictions following the Trump administration's implementation of tariffs. Well, the U.S. Central Bank officials suggested they continue to expect a reduction in borrowing cost by 50 basis points before year end, considering the anticipated economic slowdown and eventual decline in inflation rates. Additionally, they reduced the U.S. GDP growth forecast for the current year from 2.1% to 1.7%, alongside predictions of a marginally higher unemployment rate by the end of the year. Also, U.S. President Donald Trump said the Federal Reserve would be better off cutting rates as U.S. tariffs start to ease their way into the economy. U.S. Fed Chief Jerome Powell said the economic activity was looking strong, but the surveys conducted by the central bank showed weak sentiments, partly because of tariffs. He also said that the forecasts have considered the tariff retaliation by other countries on U.S.
Let me say that it is going to be very difficult to have a precise assessment of how much of inflation is coming from tariffs and from other, and that's already the case. You may have seen that goods inflation moved up pretty significantly in the first 2 months of the year. Trying to track that back to actual tariff increases, given what was tariffed and what was not, very, very challenging. So some of it, the answer is clearly some of it. A good part of it is coming from tariffs, but we'll be working, and so will other forecasters, to try to find the best possible way to separate non-tariff inflation from tariff inflation.
Well, stocks were high on Wednesday after the Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged in its latest policy announcement and maintained its forecast for lower rates later in 2025. Gold flipped positive, touching a record high, and U.S. Treasury yields paired gains. All three major U.S. stock indexes gained upward momentum after the announcement. The Dow Jones rose 383.32 points, the S&P gained 60.63 points, and the Nasdaq rose 246.67 points. European stocks closed higher, notching their fourth consecutive session of gains. U.S. Treasury yields pared their early advance after policymakers indicated they anticipate the Fed funds target rate will be reduced by 50 basis points this year. Crude prices gained ground after U.S. data showed an inventory drawdown. While markets kept an eye on the limited Russia-Ukraine ceasefire, gold prices turned positive and touched a record high in the wake of the Fed's lowered economic projections. Well, Google was hit with 2 charges of breaching landmark EU rules on Wednesday, while Apple was ordered to help rivals connect with its iPhones and iPads as Europe's antitrust regulators continue to crack down against big tech. The move by the European Commission came despite threats from U.S. President Donald Trump to levy tariffs against countries which impose fines on U.S. companies. The EU competition watchdog issued preliminary findings charging Google with DMA violations in both areas. The Google case centered on whether it restricts app developers from informing users about offers outside its App Store, Google Play, and whether it favors its associated search services such as Google Flights and Google Search. The Commission also issued 2 orders to Apple to open up its ecosystem to rivals 6 months after it began so-called specification proceedings against the iPhone maker. The first charge in the Google case focused on the company's practices on its App Store, Google Play. In the second charge, regulators said Google favored its own services such as Google Shopping, Google Hotels, and Google Flights over rivals. The company, which has been fined more than $8.7 billion by the EU in the last decades for various antitrust violations, risk fines of up to 10% of its global annual sales if found guilty of breaching the DMA. And Argentina's Congress gives President Javier Milei the green light to reach a new loan agreement with the International Monetary Fund. Argentina's lower house on Wednesday approved a potential new deal between the country and the International Monetary Fund. The vote was passed with 129 lawmakers in favor, 108 against, and with 6 abstaining. The approval allows Milei to seal an agreement that would bring tranquility to the markets and would allow Argentina, which is currently paying a debt of $44,000 million to the organization, to move forward in the liberalization of the capital market. Finding itself in a clear minority in Congress, the government decided to defy Argentine law and approve the agreement by decree. As it was ratified by the Chamber of Deputies, it does not need to be debated in the Senate. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for some sports news. The second edition of Khelo India Para Games is set to begin in the national capital on Thursday. These games will be held in 6 disciplines, including para athletics, para archery, and para badminton. The opening ceremony will be held at the Indira Gandhi Stadium on Thursday evening in the presence of over 1,300 athletes and 350 support staff. The tournament will be streamed on the YouTube page of Prasar Bharati Sports and will also be available on live broadcast on DD channels. And two-time Olympic medalist PV Sindhu suffered an early exit from the women's single event at the Swiss Open 2025. Former world champion Sindhu succumbed to world number 31 Julie Jacobson in a contest that lasted 61 minutes. The defeat marks the Indian star shuttler's third consecutive first-round exit of the year. Meanwhile, India's women doubles pair of Gayatri Gopi-Chand and Trisa Jolly advanced into the second round of the badminton tournament. The Indian duo comfortably defeated Aline Muller and Kelly Van Buiten to move to the next round, where they will face Germany's Selin Hubst and Amelie Lehmann. Also, New Zealand runner Sam Ruth scripted history by becoming the first 15-year-old to break the 4-minute barrier in the mile. Ruth completed the run in 3 minutes and 58.35 seconds at Mount Smart Stadium in Auckland, surpassing the previous record by 2 seconds. He achieved the milestone just 24 days before his 16th birthday, with pacemakers Sam Tanner and Ben Wall also finishing under 4 minutes. Norway's Jakob Ingebrigtsen was previously the youngest to shatter the 4-minute barrier when he ran 3 minutes and 58.07 seconds as a 16-year-old. And in soccer, Team India secured a dominant 3-0 win over Maldives in a FIFA international friendly match at Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium in Shillong on Wednesday. The Blue Tigers led 1-0 at half-time. Seasoned defender Rahul Bheke and player of the match Liston Koleko scored the first 2 goals for India. The biggest highlight of the game came in the 76th minute when Sunil Chhetri scored his 95th international goal. Chhetri netted the ball with a swift header to announce the return to international football. The win ended a 15-month international victory drought for the Blue Tigers, who will now play badminton in the AFC Asian Cup 2027 qualifiers on March 25th. Well, from the peaceful mornings in villages to the hustle and bustle of cities, sparrows once filled the air with their cheerful chirps. Flocks of these tiny birds, uninvited yet welcome, created unforgettable memories. To raise awareness and protect these small creatures, World Sparrow Day is celebrated every year on the 20th of March. Take a look.
Once abundant, the house sparrow is now a rare sight and a mystery in many places. Over time, these little friends have just vanished from our lives. That makes such initiatives all the more important. To raise awareness about the declining sparrow population, the World Sparrow Day was initiated by Nature Forever, a bird conservation organization in 2010. In 2012, the house sparrow became Delhi's state bird. Since then, the event has gained global attention. In India, sparrows are not just birds, they are a symbol of shared history and culture. Yet the declining in numbers continue incessantly. Several factors contribute to this decline. The use of unleaded petrol has led to toxic compounds that harm the insects sparrows depend on for food. Urbanization has also taken away their natural nesting spaces. Pesticide used in agriculture has reduced the number of insects impacting sparrows' food supply. Environmental conservationist Jagat Kinkhapwala has emphasized the need to balance development with environmental protection. PM Modi has also highlighted the importance of protecting sparrows in his monthly radio show Man Ki Baat.
हमारे आसपास बायोडायवर्सिटी को बनाए रखने में गोरैया का एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण योगदान होता है, लेकिन आज शहरों में बड़ी मुश्किल से गोरैया दिखती है। बढ़ते शहरीकरण की वजह से गोरैया हमसे दूर चली गई है। आज की पीढ़ी के ऐसे बहुत से बच्चे हैं जिन्होंने गोरैया को सिर्फ तस्वीरों या वीडियो में देखा है। ऐसे बच्चों के जीवन में इस प्यारी पक्षी की वापसी के लिए कुछ अनोखे प्रयास हो रहे हैं।
Sparrows are small but significant birds that play an essential role in maintaining ecological balance. World Sparrow Day is a reminder of the importance of preserving our tiny feathered friends. Bureau Report, DD India.
All right, that's all for this edition of DT India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DT India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. Well, we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DT India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DT India News Hour.